Kia ora koutou. This is just a little video to help you with your applications and thinking particularly of your final essay where you are writing an exegesis on Pauline epistle. So just a few slides to take you through. A good application. So the first thing we need to do in writing a good application is choosing a key point from passage. Now, really, you don't want to be waiting until you've nearly finished your essay to start thinking about application. So as you're studying the passage, be thinking of options or ideas that you could do. And these things are best thought of over time and not pushed out in 5 minutes. I find the best time for thinking about these kind of things, if I'm working on it for a sermon or something like that, is to actually be thinking about passage while I'm doing the dishes or while I'm sitting at the traffic lights. And trying to make the connection, you know, what are the key ideas or a key point from this passage that I really want to think more about in terms of what it means for me today. So you're looking for an idea, an image, or an instruction from the passage that connects with your own life, church, ministry, or cultural context. So I'm trying to keep this fairly broad because I don't want to restrict you as to where you go with this. What makes a good application is not the specific route you take, but the way you do the applying. So that it starts with this key point picked from the passage. And it's really important that this is a key idea. It's an idea you've explored in some detail, not a side thought that you then pick up at the end of the essay because you think it's going to be easy to apply. But it really wants to come from the detailed, rigorous work you've already done in the passage. And it's important to say choose only one. So a few applications I had on the last essay, people chose lots of different applications, and so they were very thin because instead of using the words 300 words to really dive into one application in depth, I got 3 or 4 very short applications, which is not hitting what's required for the assignment and not really challenging you to think deeply about the issue. And make it clear where you've got that from. Now, when you write your application, that's the first thing you do is say, this is my key point, and this is where it comes from in the passage. Okay, don't leave it up to me to guess the connection. It's not that I'm not good at guessing, it's that I can't give you marks for how good I am at guessing, because it's entirely possible that I guess a connection that you hadn't even thought of. So that's how human brains work sometimes. So make sure you make it clear, the link. So here's an example. If I did an exegesis on Mark 4 and the calming of the storm, you could have a key point there. Jesus rebukes the disciples for being cowardly, and the key point would be we shouldn't fear because we're with Jesus. So these are just examples. You don't have to agree with them. I'm just trying to get the idea across. Example B would be Romans 8, 1-8. A key point from this passage would be that we need to set our minds on the spirit instead of on the things of the flesh. So here we've got some key points from the passage that we've decided in my example to make into our application. So you will choose a key point from your work on the passage to make an application from. Then we need to think about the specific context. Now, these 2 words, they're in the course outline and the instructions about this, specific and practical, and this is where you get your marks. If you're not specific and you're not practical, you're going to miss out on marks. So the question is, what aspect of your context does this key point relate to, or do you want to relate it to? It might relate to all sorts of things, but again, you need to pick one. So describe your context with details. You need to tell me about the situation you're applying it to. Obviously, keep confidences. I don't want to know anything that I don't need to know. You can change names, you can change details. It's best if it's based in your reality, but it can be absolutely anonymized or changed so that you're not breaking any confidences. And really, we need to move from the general to the specific. So a general statement is not going to be good enough. I need specific, and the more specific, the better. And the way you get specific is to give details. So here's our first example. We shouldn't fear Jesus. And in my application, I want to think about, it's made me think where are we afraid? And I think about Christians engaged in the culture wars are afraid. So that's a general idea that Christians who are stuck into culture wars are afraid. But more specifically, I've actually got a friend in my church who is afraid of the New World Order. And this is what's really driving them. So I've gone from a general idea to a really specific situation. So now, if I was writing this in an application, I would put much more information in here. You could tell me a little bit more about the church, but tell me a bit more details about the friend. What is it they're afraid of in regard to the New World Order? What do they think is going to happen? Where do they get their ideas from? How is it affecting them? So give me details. In the second example, we're supposed to set our minds on the spirit, but what that makes me think of is that we get distracted a lot by technology. That's a general contextual problem in the general world. So more specifically, in my flat, my flatmates have an unhealthy relationship with social media. It's filling their head with unhelpful ideas of what? Is it filling them with negative body images? Is it filling them with their lust for possessions? What is it that it's doing? So get specific. Tell me a little bit about your flat. Again, keep confidences, but go into some details and explain what's happening, why it's a problem. Okay, so what you're going to see now is this 300 words on application is getting filled up pretty quickly. You've got to really jam quite a lot of information in there. And that's great. That's what I want to see. I want to see really specific. And then the third stage is this, to bring a practical application to this specific context. What could you do that will bring the key point to impact the context you've mentioned? So we're bringing the key point and the context together, and we want to come out with something we can do. That's what practical means, right? It's something you can do, something you can change, or something you can attempt at the very least. Again, there could be lots of possibilities. There's no right answers. What I'm interested in is how you do it. So explore one possibility in detail. So here we've got the key point: we shouldn't fear with Jesus. We've got the context of a friend who's afraid of the New World Order. So the ideal would be they need to stop being afraid and trust in Jesus. But that's not practical. That's just ideal. If you tell someone that, that's not going to necessarily bring about any change. So let's get practical. Now, this might not be a good suggestion. This is just an example of a practical result. You could say, I'm going to invite my friend to coffee and then bring up Jesus every time they bring up the New World Order, so I can challenge them as to where their focus is. So they're talking about the New World Order. They bring every conversation around to it. And I'm going to say, yeah, but where's Jesus in this? Do you think Jesus is afraid of the New World Order? What is Jesus calling us to do in this situation? And so I've been encouraged by this passage to think, instead of focusing on my fear of the storms out there, is I need to focus on who Jesus is. So I'm going to help my friend do that. And so again, you give me more detail. Think, imagine some of the responses you might go to that conversation to have. Some of the challenges your friend might throw back at you, and how, with this insight you've got from the passage, you're going to have that conversation. Or in the second example, we're keeping our minds on the spirit, and we're thinking about flatmates with unhealthy social media practices. So again, an ideal is that flatmates need to be more spiritual. Well, yes, but how practically are we going to get them there? So we move from the ideal to the practical. I'm going to start a weekly device-free day that begins with prayer and scripture to help my flatmates put their minds on the spirit. Okay, so there's going to need to be a discussion there, isn't there? There's going to need to be some thought about how exactly you're going to do that. Are you going to enforce it? Is it going to be fun, or is it going to be a burden? Are all your flatmates going to agree to do it? Talk to me about it. Develop the scenario. Give me some idea that you've actually thought about this, rather than at the end of your essay gone, we need to be more spiritual and not look at our devices. So give me some thoughts about how you can practically make that a reality. So that's hopefully given you a bit more of an idea as to what's expected, if you didn't already appreciate from applications. Final thoughts on this: make the links clear. So I want to see clearly, how have you got from the passage to your key point? Sorry, that should be one key point, not key points. to your specific context and to your practical application. So make it clear how you're going through these things and how they connect. Don't make me guess what the links are. Details show you've spent time reflecting on the subject, and they help me understand that you know what you're talking about. So just like when we talk about the Bible, we want to show we are informed readers of Scripture, not just people who are talking off the tops of our heads. By showing me some reflection on details and consideration of the subject, you're showing me that you've actually thought about this and that I'm reading the fruit of some deep critical thinking on your behalf on context and application. And details actually give you more to work with in terms of thinking about how the passage connects to your situation. Maybe there's some more parallels you haven't explored. Maybe there's some divergences you need to highlight so that I know you're not getting carried away applying the passage to a situation that doesn't quite fit. Show me you've thought about it. And when in doubt, always move from the general to the specific and from the ideal to the practical. Okay, so this is what is being asked for, specific and practical application. So if it's general and if it's ideal and that's all it does, then it's going to score low. Whereas if it's specific and it's practical, straight away, you're going to get a high mark. And because it's 20% of the essay mark, that makes a significant difference. It'll probably, a good application compared to a basic one will move you up at least one, if not two grade boundaries. So it's really worth putting some time in to this if you're bothered about your grades or if you're just bothered about doing it well. So there we go. Thanks for your time. I hope that's helpful. Keep your questions and thoughts coming in, and I will look forward to seeing you at our next lecture.